Hello and welcome into Sports Talk on a Budget. Crazy day of sports news. Things have been dropping all over the place. I had a whole show already set up for today. Going to scrap that. Going to do some of what I had planned. I'm going to scrap that and talk about some of the breaking news and just news that has been going on all day in sports and mainly in college and professional football. But today is January 10th. Year of our Lord 2024. Now we're into 2024, into the new year. This is my first podcast of the new year. Like I said, a ton of stories dropping. This is Sports Talk on a Budget. If you prefer the audio version, you can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and basically wherever you get your podcast. If you prefer the video version, it is here on YouTube under Sports Talk on a Budget. Please smash that subscribe and like button if you do get a chance. And if you want to leave a comment, I'm open to constructive criticism or just anything you'd like to leave. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the show. As I said, I had a whole show planned today that I basically just scrapped. I will do some of it, but big news has dropped in both college football and the NFL. Huge coach being fired in the NFL and a huge coach and basically the GOAT of college football coaches retiring as well. So first topic, I'm going to go to college football. I'm going to talk about the retirement of Nick Saban and just his legacy, my overall reaction to him retiring, and what this means for college football and Alabama going forward. And then I will talk a little bit about the national championship on Monday night. Not a huge reaction. Michigan was the better team and showed it on Monday night, even though they proved me wrong, and I'll get into that a little bit as well. Then I'm going to move into the NFL, and Seattle decides to fire their head coach, Pete Carroll, and Tennessee fired Mike Vrabel yesterday. Is Bill Belichick next? Going to go ahead and react to some of that news. And then I will get into the my playoff predictions for Wild Card weekend and then just the playoffs going forward, who I think will make it to the next round, the championship round, and then the Super Bowl as well. With all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into this show. So as I mentioned, huge day in sports, huge breaking news that has dropped just all day today. I'm going to start in college football and the retirement announcement of Nick Saban, of course, the head coach of Alabama. Nick Saban is by far the greatest coach in my lifetime, and I think he's the undisputed greatest college football coach of all time. 6 national championships at Alabama, 7 total. He won one back in 2003, or he shared it at least with USC at LSU, so 7 total national championships to his name. 16 straight double-digit win seasons at Alabama. After his first year, they rolled off 16 straight double-digit win seasons. Seemed he was always in the playoff. He was always vying for a national championship. This was a crazy stat that I heard earlier today. Every single 4-year recruiting class, so that means you get recruited, you come in as a freshman, you leave as a senior, whether that's to the NFL or to something different. If you stayed 4 years in any of his recruiting classes in the last 16 years, you won a national championship. And sometimes you won multiple, which is insane. Insane. So that means if you were recruited by Nick Saban and you decided to stay till your senior year, you didn't leave early for the NFL or transfer at this point in college football, you won a national championship. And that is just insane. That is something that I don't think any coach is going to be able to say going forward. And of course, no coach, I don't believe, has been able to say that in the past. So that is an unbelievable stat for Nick Saban. As a USC fan, but always just, not that I didn't like Nick Saban, I always had a respect for Nick Saban. I didn't like the fact that he always won, but that's my problem. That's not his problem. But there was always a respect of what he did. Like I said, the unquestioned best coach of this era, and I think the unquestioned best coach of all time. And he was a guy that adapted. When he came back, when he left the Miami Dolphins job and decided to take the job in Tuscaloosa for Alabama, it was a totally different game of football than it would be 5 years from then. Then it would be again 5 years from then. And then these last 3 years with the transfer portal, NIL, and just madness going on in college football, conference realignment, he was still able to basically do exactly what he needed to do. He was still able to be successful. He was still able to make college football playoff appearances. He was still able to make conference championship games and win conference championships. He won the national championship and maybe the hardest year to win a national championship in the COVID year 2020. And that team was absolutely dominant. He had more first round picks in his tenure at Alabama than losses in his tenure at Alabama, which is just another mind-blowing stat, and it's just something that I don't know if I'll ever see or hear anybody do that. Maybe Kirby Smart can do that at Georgia, but I don't know. That's a feat that's really difficult. But in a time where you see a lot of these coaches haven't been able to adapt to the new age of football, to the offensive wave of football, to just the different changes in football, especially at the college football level. Not only did Nick Saban adapt every single time, but he dominated every single time. He dominated, he adapted. He was the spearhead in those movements. He knew that the way he came up coaching the game, defense mentality, defense first, wasn't going to win, wasn't going to beat a Clemson team, wasn't going to beat Georgia teams, wasn't going to beat Auburn teams, wasn't going to beat Urban Meyer and Ohio State teams. It wasn't going to beat those teams. What did he do? He changed his philosophy. They became a high-powered offensive team, and they had guys like just Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, who ended up going on to win a Heisman, Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs, just unbelievable talent, running back talent, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, just so many great players that have come through Alabama that he has coached. And if you hear a lot of those players, whether it's in interviews or whether they have jobs in TV now or they're still playing in NFL, they have nothing but good things to say about them. There is only a few players that have had bad things to say about them, and most of the time that has ended up being their decision, or the reason that they have a beef with them is more on them than it is on Nick Saban. So, yeah, I mean, just an unbelievable amount of respect for Nick Saban. He is a guy, like I said, that'll go down as the unquestioned best coach of the modern era. And in my opinion, like I said, the unquestioned best coach in college football history. But it's more, his legacy is more than that. His legacy is the adapting that he did late in his career. His legacy is just the litany of coaches that he went through, and those coaches became head coaches, whether it's Kirby Smart at Georgia, or it's Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, or it's Steve Sarkisian at Texas, and the list goes on and on. I mean, Mel Tucker was there for a little bit. Billy Napier was there for a little bit. There is just, like I said, there is a list and a litany of guys who have come through that program, coached under Nick Saban, and then got opportunities to get head coaching or other coaching jobs at other places that they wouldn't have gotten if they wouldn't have come through Alabama and been under Nick Saban. So his legacy is going to stretch further than him retiring today. You'll see it all over the sport. You already see it all over the sport, the legacy and the influence that he had on the sport. And he is just a guy that, I mean, you can't tell the history of college football without mentioning him a lot, and mentioning his Alabama teams quite a bit. So hats off to Nick Saban. Great career. I believe he'll probably end up in a booth, whether it's at ESPN on College Game Day or wherever he wants to go. He can basically call up any network that does college football and say, hey, I want to work there, and they would hire him tomorrow. Actually, they would hire him yesterday, basically. So he can pick any college football job that he wants, and that'll be his. Any college football broadcasting job, and that'll be his. So he's not going to be out of work if he doesn't want to be out of work very long, but he may end up just going into retirement and just doing whatever he wants, but he has earned the right to choose whatever he wants to do in his next step of life. And he leaves college football, in my opinion, as I've said multiple times already, as the unquestioned GOATs of college football coaches. Going to stay in college football and just react a little bit to the Michigan-Washington game on Monday night. And I mean, Michigan proved me wrong. As you heard in my college football playoff preview podcast with my friend Mason Slangy, I wasn't sure how good this Michigan team was. They played a really weak schedule in the regular season. Their offense was really kind of just not. It wasn't middle of the pack. It was okay, but it wasn't great. I didn't think J.J. McCarthy was great. I thought their running backs Corum and Donovan Edwards were really good, but I feel like if you could slow down their run game and make J.J. McCarthy beats you could beat them. And then I wasn't sure. I thought their defense was good, but I wasn't sure how good they were because the offenses in the Big Ten were not great this year, and that includes Ohio State, who wasn't great this year on offense. They had great weapons on the outside, but Kyle McCord wasn't able to consistently get those weapons the ball on a consistent basis. And then Penn State was not good on offense at all this year. So I was questioning how good Michigan was and how legit of a team they were, and I was wrong. That defense is absolutely legit. They don't have any stars on the defensive line, but they all are really, really good players to great players, and they all do their job very well. They have stars in the secondary in Will Johnson and Mikey Sanders still. Those guys were able to shut down the receivers of Washington. Odunze, Polk, and McMillan. Odunze is going to probably be a top 10 to 15 pick. Polk will probably go in the late first round, and McMillan will probably go in the third or fourth round. They just shut down a trio of wide receivers that are all going to be playing in the NFL next year if they all decide to declare for the NFL. And they got after Michael Penix. They made Michael Penix uncomfortable. And you could tell from the jump that Michael Penix was uncomfortable, and he was totally a different quarterback when he's uncomfortable, which most quarterbacks are. So Michigan, like I said, they proved me wrong. Their defense stifled Washington the entire night. A couple of times they gave up big plays, but for the most part, they were in Penix's lap, and they were all over his star receivers, and they weren't letting them do anything. And they dictated the pace of the game, and they dictated how the game went. Michigan's defense did. Like I said, Michael Penix struggled under pressure. Most quarterbacks do. As you can see, I'm a Patriots fan. Tom Brady is struggling under when he gets under pressure and when he is rushed, and he's not able to make rhythm passes and rhythm reads and kind of move from his first read to his second read and to his third read and still able to complete the pass. Any quarterback that gets under that kind of pressure and is not able to be within rhythm, most of them aren't as good as when they are in rhythm. So Michael Penix, I still think is a really good quarterback. I still think deserves to be a first round pick, but yes, he had a rough night. He's a guy that you may have to look at again because they had the best offensive line in the country, the Washington offensive line. They won the Joe Moore Award, which goes to the best offensive line in the country. And Michigan was just beating that Washington offensive line like they stole something. Was beating them all night. And Michigan, whether it was Graham or whether it was Grant, any of those guys along that defensive line were able to get after Michael Penix, get him off his spot. He threw 2 interceptions. He could have thrown a couple more that were close, but he was off all night. He missed Rome Odunze on a wide open kind of corner route on the outside to Rome Odunze, who's wide open, would have been a touchdown or at least a really big gain, but most likely a touchdown. He missed them there. He was off all night, and that is a credit to the Michigan defense and what they did and how they stepped up. And that Michigan offense, you run for I think it was 304 yards, and you hold Washington to 46 yards rushing. They were the better team. They deserved to win. They were the best team wire to wire this year in college football. 15-0. Yes, people are going to say some asterisks because of the sign stealing, and they may vacate this victory sometime in the future. I don't really care. I don't really care about that. In my eyes, they're the national champion this year. I'm a USC fan. They vacated the national championship for USC in 2004. I remember watching that season. I remember them going, 13-0, 13 or 14-0. I remember 55-19 in the Orange Bowl to beat Oklahoma, who was the number 1 team in the nation at that point. And I remember Matt Leinart throwing 6 touchdown passes in that game and holding up that crystal football as the national champion. So I remember all that, even though they've technically been vacated. So I don't think any Michigan fan's going to care, and I don't think any fan of college football is going to care that the NCAA decides to vacate that championship down the road. We know that the champion in 2023 was Michigan, just like we know that the champion in 2004 was USC. Just a quick kind of wanted to react a little bit to the potential that Jim Harbaugh leaves to the NFL. I think he does leave. There's a lot of good opening jobs now. Now you have Seattle open. Now you have the Raiders aren't a bad job with Devontae Adams and some of the other receivers, Jacoby Myers, Hunter Renfrow, and Josh Jacobs. Obviously, you can go to the Chargers with Justin Herbert. That would be a nice place to go. Even Washington's not a bad job, especially with the second overall pick. You're probably going to get at least Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jaden Daniels at this point. So I think he probably ends up going to an NFL job, but I don't think it's a slam dunk like everybody else does, because with Nick Saban retiring, that might open the landscape even more. You have an opportunity to maybe dominate football even more, because now you don't have to worry about potentially facing the GOAT again in the college football playoff. So that changes a lot of things. Maybe that keeps Jim Harbaugh in college football. Maybe it doesn't, but I think that does kind of make you stop and think a little bit. But let's go ahead and I'm going to move to my second topic of the day, and we're going to move to the NFL, and we're going to talk about the other big news that dropped today, and a little bit about the big news that dropped yesterday, but more about the big news that dropped today, and that was the Seattle Seahawks deciding to move on and fire their head coach, Pete Carroll, who has been their head coach since the 2011 season. So 13 seasons as the Seattle Seahawks head coach, 2 Super Bowl appearances, 1 Super Bowl victory, I think about 4 or 5 conference championship appearances, plenty of division titles along the way. A guy who has been one of the best head coaches in the NFL for the last decade plus. And there's no disputing that. Pete Carroll is one of the best head coaches, has been, like I said, one of the best head coaches in the league for the last 10 years. He's probably on a short list of about 10 to 15 coaches as best head coaches of all time. He's one of the only coaches, along with Barry Switzer and Jimmy Johnson, to win a Super Bowl and a national championship. Jim Harbaugh has a national championship now, but lost his Super Bowl, so there's still only 3. And Barry Switzer basically took Jimmy Johnson's Cowboys team to win his Super Bowl. But either way, there's only 3 guys to have ever done that, and he won 2 national titles, and he won a Super Bowl, and was one of the greatest plays I've ever seen in Malcolm Butler interception away from being a 2-time Super Bowl champion. And what could have changed there if that play didn't happen? But I'm glad that it did, of course. But Pete Carroll, it was said that he didn't want to leave. He didn't obviously want to be fired. He really pushed hard to stay at the end, but the Seahawks decided to move in another direction. Pete Carroll is 72 years old, but you would never know it by watching the guy. He's still full of energy. He still moves around on the sideline, back and forth like he always has. He still looks like a guy that could coach maybe up until his late 70s and maybe potentially early 80s. So he's supposed to be like some sort of analyst role for the Seahawks. I think if someone else offers him a head coaching job or another job, I would love USC to reach out and see if he wants to be a defensive analyst or be on the staff somehow with USC. That would be awesome to get him back in the fold, because those were the glory days early in the 2000s for USC. And that's why the reason I am a USC fan is a lot to do with Pete Carroll. So Pete Carroll, if he wants to go somewhere else, I think he'll have a number of jobs or a number of opportunities that he wants to do. I don't think he's just going to be an analyst for the Seattle Seahawks going forward. I think he's going to find something else to do. But his legacy I think it's cemented. His legacy after USC was that he failed in the NFL, but he was great in college, and he got his second opportunity in the NFL with the Seahawks, and he made the most of it. Was very successful, of course, won a Super Bowl, went to another Super Bowl championship, won plenty of division championships. So he's a guy, his legacy, I think, is cemented as one of the best football coaches of all time, if you combine college and pro. And he's a guy I think that I'll remember very fondly as a USC fan, but not even just that. I'll remember fondly just as a person. Obviously, I've never met the guy, I've never talked to the guy, but just seeing him in interviews and seeing him during games, he was always upbeat, always positive person, always had a ton of energy, always seemed to get along with his players really well and understand his players. Even now, he's 50 years or 45 to 50 years older than a lot of his players on his current team right now. He seems to relate with them really well. He just seems to be a really good players coach and a guy who just understands what the players want and what they're looking for in a coach. And he's just that guy. So hats off to Pete Carroll as well on an unbelievable career. I think he still continues to coach at some capacity and is not just an analyst for the Seattle Seahawks, but hats off to him for an unbelievable career. And if you want to get on the staff somewhere with Lincoln Riley at USC, I would not be upset at that. Actually, I would welcome that and want that done tomorrow, if that's the case. Another kind of big news dropped yesterday with Mike Vrabel being fired by the Tennessee Titans. Mike Vrabel was the coach there for 5 seasons, made the playoffs the first 3 seasons, but missed the playoffs these last 2 seasons. The furthest he went was the AFC Championship game about 4 years back, where they lost to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. But this was another shocker to me. I was shocked. I've been shocked by all 3 of these things. I was shocked that Nick Saban retired. I was shocked that Pete Carroll was fired, and I was shocked that Mike Vrabel was fired. But Tennessee decides that they want to go in another direction. They'll probably go with some sort of offensive coach. You have a young quarterback with Will Levis, who they think might be their future. I'm still not sold. I haven't seen nearly enough from Will Levis, but as a Patriots fan, we keep on hearing that there's a potential that Bill Belichick will be fired or they'll part ways or whatever. That still hasn't happened yet. But if that does happen, the first call I would make if I was Robert Kraft was to Mike Vrabel. Of course, won 3 Super Bowls with the Patriots, was an awesome player. Never coached on the Patriots staff, but he would have had a job if he wanted. I'm sure Bill Belichick would have hired him. But just went into the Patriots Hall of Fame this past year. So this is a guy who is synonymous with the Patriots and the Patriot way, and just New England and Foxborough runs in his blood. So I think he would be a slam dunk hire for the Patriots if Bill Belichick decides to part ways, or if Kraft decides that they need to fire Bill Belichick. But just a lot of things have happened these last 2 days. So like I said, I had a whole show prepared and I had to kind of scrap that and go in another direction. But let's go ahead and finish off with what I wanted to finish off with on the show. And that is going to be my wild card picks and my overall playoff picks. So let's go ahead and go to the wild card. I'm going to start with the Saturday game. That's going to be the Saturday afternoon game, technically, and that is the Browns at the Houston Texans. And the Houston Texans are the best story in the sport. C.J. Stroud, rookie quarterback, DeMeco Ryans, rookie head coach. They win their division. They get into the playoffs. And I think they have an opportunity. I think they win, but they're a 2.5 point underdog. I think they win and cover. So give me the Texans plus 2.5 against the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns are a great story as well. A team that has gone through 5 different starting quarterbacks this season. And their defense has been unbelievable with guys like Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, just a ton of studs on the defensive side. They pick up Joe Flacco from the couch, basically, about a month ago. He's come in, or about a month and a half ago at this point. He's come in, has played really well. He has had some turnovers, but has played well given the circumstances. But I think this Texans team, they have a lot of firepower on the offensive side. C.J. Stroud, like I said, is playing really well. Nico Collins has emerged as the number 1 wide receiver now that Tank Dell is out with his injury. So this Texans team, I feel like they're at home. This is their time to get a victory. Give me the Texans plus 2.5, and I think they actually win the game outright as well. Then we have the Dolphins at the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are a 4-point favorite. This is the Peacock game. It's exclusively on Peacock. How you do that for a playoff game is beyond me. If you want to do that for a random regular season game, that's fine. But for a playoff game that involves probably the biggest star in the NFL right now, and Patrick Mahomes, I don't get that. I just don't get it. But either way, the Dolphins, like I said, are at the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are a 4-point favorite. The Dolphins, basically, all they had to do, they had the division in their grasp most of the last weeks of the season, and they lose at home. They lose on the road to the Ravens, then they lose at home last week to the Bills, and they lose the division. They had every opportunity to win that game Sunday night. The Buffalo was giving it to them. Josh Allen had 2 turnovers. They had a terrible mistake at the end of the half where they couldn't put any points on the board. The Dolphins were given every opportunity to win that game and couldn't win that game. So Dolphins, now they get to go to Kansas City. Kansas City has not looked great this season, but it's still a tough place to play. The temperature is supposed to be negative. So the temperature is supposed to be 0 with the wind chill in the negatives in Kansas City. They're still a team that you don't want to see on a weekly basis. They've all had a week rest. Basically, at least their most important guys didn't play last week at LA against the Chargers. So I don't like this. I don't like this spot in this matchup for the Dolphins. So I'm going to go ahead and roll with the Chiefs to win and cover. Give me the Chiefs -4 in this game. Then we have the Steelers at the Bills. So yeah, I'm doing AFC first and then NFC next. So then we have the Steelers at the Bills, and the Bills are a 10-point favorite in this game. Now the Steelers are a team that should be happy, and I know they're not going to be, but they're the Steelers, and it's Mike Tomlin who's been there forever as well. should be happy just be in the playoffs because I don't think they really have any business being in the playoffs. They're on their third starting quarterback. Pickett got hurt. Trubisky was awful, of course, and now Mason Rudolph has actually had a couple of back-to-back good games. George Pickens has played much better under Mason Rudolph than he had under the other two quarterbacks, but I just don't like this matchup. I don't think Buffalo's playing that great. A lot of people are talking about, oh, Buffalo's this big threat. Oh, watch out for Buffalo. They didn't play great Sunday night, but Miami played even worse, so they got that victory. They were handed 4 turnovers in their own in the Patriots' territory 2 weeks ago, and basically gifted 20 points. So Josh Allen's numbers since Joe Brady took over as offensive coordinator and they fired Ken Dorsey are actually lower. But what's good for this team is the defensive numbers are better in that time, and James Cook has gotten more involved. So when Joe Brady took over, he's focused on getting James Cook in that running game more involved, and that's what's been kind of the bread and butter for the Bills. And then Josh Allen doing Josh Allen things, whether that's turning over the ball or making just unbelievable plays that basically only him can make. So the Bills, I still don't think they're a huge threat for the Super Bowl. I still think they have major flaws, including Josh Allen's just erratic play. But I think they're much better than the Steelers at home. It's going to be cold. I know Pittsburgh cold, so it's not going to be hard for the Steelers. But I just don't see any edge that the Steelers have, especially without T.J. Watt. Their record without T.J. Watt is awful. So I don't see any edge that they have, or even any kind of close matchup that they have. So I think the Bills win. They're favored by 10. I think they cover too. I think they win by a couple touchdowns, if not more. So give me the Bills minus 10 in this game. And then we'll move to the NFC, and we have the Packers at the Cowboys, and this is the Sunday afternoon game, Sunday night on the East Coast. And the Cowboys are a 7.5-point favorite in this game. Now, the Cowboys are 16-0 at home over the last 2 years, so they're a really good home team. Dak is much better at home. The rest of the team is much better at home. The Packers, they're a team on the rise. They're a very young team, youngest team in the league by average. Jordan Love is really coming to his own. Young receivers like Jaden Reed and Dontavius Wicks and Romeo Doubs have really come into their own. You, of course, know their two-headed running back duo, which is Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. They can do damage as well, but this Cowboys team, their defense plays much better at home with Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, and Diggs on the back end, and Bland out there as well. They play better at home. Dak plays much better at home. CeeDee Lamb should get potentially some MVP consideration, or at least finish in the top 5. He had an unbelievable year. I just think Cowboys too much at home. I think they win, but I think the Packers keep it close. So give me the Packers plus 7.5, but the Cowboys win. So Cowboys win the game. Packers cover. Packers plus 7.5 is my play there. And then we have, this is going to be the early game, I guess, one of the early games on Sunday, and that is the Rams at the Lions. No, sorry, this is a Sunday night game. This is the Sunday night game, and that is the Rams at the Lions, and the Lions are currently a 3-point favorite. Storylines galore in this game. This is the first playoff game for the Lions in like 30 plus years, home playoff game in like 30 plus years. You have Matthew Stafford returning to the team that drafted him, that he played 10 plus years in Detroit, was never able to get them a home playoff game, but got them to the playoffs multiple times. And then you have Jared Goff playing against the Rams and Sean McVay, a team that said he wasn't good enough and basically threw him aside and traded him to Detroit. There's a ton of revenge factor for him there. The star rookie tight end, Sam Laporta for the Detroit Lions, is doubtful for this game, and I don't think will play. That's a huge blow. This Rams team has played really well down the stretch. They finished the season 7-1, and their only loss was on the road in overtime to the Baltimore Ravens, who look like the best team and probably are the best team in the NFL right now. So this Rams team is playing really well. Puka Nacua obviously had an unbelievable rookie year. Cooper Kupp has come on more and has gotten healthier as the season went on. Kyron Williams has played really well. Their defense is still very susceptible. You can score and move the ball on their defense, but their young guys have gotten better. And of course, Aaron Donald's always going to be an issue. This is a tough game, but the Lions' first playoff home game in over 30 years. The revenge factor for Jared Goff. I still think the receivers for the Lions are underrated, including Amon-Ra St. Brown And let's see here. We got Reynolds and Khalif Raymond and Jamison Williams. I still think they're an underrated. They have really good running back play in both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. So I think they're really underrated, and their defense has gotten better, and they're very opportunistic. They can force a lot of turnovers on the defensive side. I think with all that playing in the into the Lions' favor, I like the Lions to win and cover. So give me the Lions -3 in this game. And then we'll finish off with the Monday night playoff game. They started this about 3 years ago. I still don't like the Monday night playoff games. I think it's not fair to the teams playing on Monday night. But the first year they did that, the Rams played on Monday night, and then they won the Super Bowl. So I guess it wasn't that big of an issue for them. But we have the Eagles at the Buccaneers, and the Eagles are currently a 3-point favorite in this game. The Eagles have been awful, straight awful to end the season. Back-to-back losses, one at home against the Cardinals and one on the road, where they still had a lot to play for. They had a chance at the 2 seed in the division, and they got absolutely boat raced by the New York Giants on the road last week. Their defense has been awful down the stretch in the season. Jalen Hurts has not played well down the stretch. They have really not much of a running game. A.J. Brown's numbers have gone down. Devontae Smith's numbers have gone down. The Buccaneers kind of squeaked by and barely got a 9-0 victory at Carolina last week to win the division, and Baker Mayfield did get banged up there. He's been practicing. He's going to play. He's just a gutsy guy. He's going to play. So I just don't trust the Eagles right now. I think there's something going on there that's not going to just be fixed overnight. So I like the Bucs to cover in this game, and I think they actually win outright. So give me the Bucs +3 in this game. So that'll move us to the divisional round, and that's where I'm going to go ahead and just make my picks all the way to the Super Bowl at this point. The divisional round in the AFC will be the Chiefs at the Bills and the Texans at the Ravens. I like the Bills in that matchup. The Bills have already beat the Chiefs on the road in Kansas City. The Chiefs, they're not a great road team. Their receivers are still struggling. I think Rashee Rice has really come on. Travis Kelce isn't what he used to be. So I think the Bills will be stout enough in Buffalo to win that game. And then you have the Texans at the Ravens is the second AFC game. This is where the clock strikes midnight on the Houston Texans. That's just too tall of an order. You're playing the best team in their house. They're going to be well rested, two weeks of rest, maybe a little bit of rust, but we'll see. But I think the Ravens win and probably cover, and it'll probably be close to an 8 or 9 point spread in that game. Then we have the Lions at the Cowboys, a rematch of the thriller that was a couple weeks ago, where the Lions probably should have won the game, but the refs just a crazy call at the end of the game, and then Dan Campbell just got stubborn and way too aggressive. Should have taken it to overtime, but decided to go for 2 and did not get it. I think the Cowboys win that game. The Cowboys, like I said, are 16-0, and at that point should be 17-0 at home. I think they're just the better overall team, and they just play super well at home. I think they'll get the best of the Lions again that day. And then we have the Bucs at the 49ers. I think this could get real ugly, traveling all the way across country. It's a big mismatch almost at every level in the 49ers' favor. I think they win, and they win handily in that game. And that sets up championship games with the Bills at the Ravens and the Cowboys at the 49ers. I like the Ravens to win at home. I just think they're just a complete team this year, more complete than they've ever been, both defensively, offensively, running, passing. They're just a complete team. They're the best team in the NFL right now, and they've shown it how they played down the stretch. So I'll have the Ravens winning the AFC. Cowboys at the 49ers. The 49ers have seemed to be kind of like the Achilles heel or the bugaboo that the Cowboys can't get past. In this opportunity, I think the Cowboys go in there. They're hungry. This would be their first championship game they've played in years. I think they go in there and get a victory and move on to the Super Bowl for the first time in over 20 years. And that sets up a Super Bowl of Ravens versus Cowboys. I think the Ravens are just way too much in this matchup, so I think the Ravens will win and be your Super Bowl champion. So the Baltimore Ravens are my pick to get all the way through and move on to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. Crazy show today. A lot of breaking news. I'm sure there'll be more breaking news in the next couple of days. We may get news that Patriots have decided to fire Bill Belichick. If that does happen, I probably will do an emergency podcast. Either way, thank you for always watching and listening. You can find this show on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. If you prefer the audio version, of course, you can watch it on YouTube under Sports Talk on a Budget. Please like and subscribe to the show if you do like the show. And thank you again for watching and listening, and have a great